The stars had never seemed so quiet. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the starship Horizon and watched the darkness of space stretch out before him. Behind him, his crew worked in silence. They all knew what was happening. They all understood the weight of this moment. After 300 years of humiliation, humanity was about to disappear from the galaxy. It had not always been this way. When humans first reached the stars, they came with hope in their hearts. They discovered that the universe was full of life. 12 great species had built a civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and they welcomed humanity with open arms. At least, that is what they said. The truth was different. Humans were useful. They worked hard. They adapted quickly. They filled the jobs that other species considered beneath them, but they were never treated as equals. The Council saw them as children at best, and as animals at worst. Nathan remembered the stories his grandfather told him. Stories of human colonies being denied basic supplies. Stories of trade agreements that always favored the elder races. Stories of Proxima, the human world that was destroyed by Therian warships and blamed on an asteroid. 2 million people died on Proxima. The Council called it a tragedy. They sent condolences, and then they buried the truth so deep that most humans never learned what really happened. But some remembered. Some kept the records. Some passed the knowledge down from generation to generation, waiting for the day when humanity could finally respond. That day had come. Lieutenant Katie Morris looked up from her console. She was young, barely 30 years old, but her eyes held the same determination that Nathan saw in all his officers. They had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. "Sir, the last evacuation ships have cleared Earth orbit. All 47 colonies have reported successful departure. Operation Quiet Night is proceeding on schedule." Nathan nodded slowly. "And the Council fleet?" "Holding position near the Kepler border. They detected some unusual activity, but they are not investigating. Their intelligence reports suggest we are conducting routine military exercises." A small smile crossed Nathan's face. The Council had always underestimated human intelligence operations. They believed that a species so young could never match their thousands of years of experience in espionage and deception. They were wrong. For the past 50 years, humanity had been preparing in secret. Hidden facilities had been constructed in the empty spaces between star systems. New technologies had been developed far from Council eyes. Ships had been built that could move without being detected by any known sensor system, and now 8 billion humans were about to vanish. "Begin the final phase," Nathan ordered. "All ships, go dark." Across the galaxy, human vessels shut down their transponders. Communication buoys went silent. Space stations that had been home to millions of people suddenly appeared empty on every Council scan. In the great trading hubs where humans had worked and lived and struggled for centuries, there was only silence. It took the Council 3 days to notice. High Counselor Verath of the Therian Dominion was the first to address the assembly. He was an ancient creature, his scaled skin gray with age, his eyes cold with centuries of contempt for lesser species. He had been High Counselor for 60 years, and in all that time he had never shown respect for any human. "It appears that our human friends have finally accepted their place in the universe," Verath announced. His voice echoed through the great chamber where representatives of all 12 species had gathered. "They have retreated to whatever forgotten corner of space will have them. The galaxy is better for their absence." Murmurs of agreement filled the room. The Vestian representative clicked his approval. The Ashen delegates nodded their feathered heads. Even the Korath, who had sometimes defended human interests, said nothing in opposition. "I propose that we divide the former human territories among our member species," Verath continued. "These worlds are rich in resources. They should not go to waste simply because their previous occupants lacked the courage to remain." The vote was swift and unanimous. Human colonies, the places where generations had been born and raised and buried, were distributed like prizes among the elder races. Human history was removed from council archives. Human contributions to science and art and culture were attributed to other species or simply erased. Within a year, it was as if humanity had never existed at all. The celebrations lasted for months. The council congratulated itself on solving the human problem without violence. They believed that their superiority had finally been recognized. They believed that the aggressive, primitive humans had simply given up and accepted their inferiority. They could not have been more wrong. Far from council space, in a region of the galaxy that no elder race had ever thought to explore, Admiral Nathan Cole stood before a gathering of human leaders. Behind him, through massive windows of reinforced glass, stretched a sight that would have terrified the council if they could have seen it. Ships, thousands of ships. Not the old, outdated vessels that humans had been forced to use under council restrictions, but new designs, sleek and powerful, and built with technologies that the elder races had never imagined. "The first phase is complete," Nathan announced. "The council believes we have fled. They believe we are gone forever. They are already fighting over the scraps of what we left behind." He paused and looked out at the faces before him. Old and young, men and women, scientists and soldiers. All of them carried the same fire in their eyes. "For 300 years we endured their contempt. We accepted their insults. We buried our dead and pretended that justice did not matter. But we never forgot. We never stopped planning. And now we begin the work that our ancestors dreamed of." Katie Morris stood in the crowd, her heart pounding with anticipation. "We will not attack them directly," Nathan continued. "We will not give them the war they expect. Instead, we will show them what humanity truly is. We will remind them of every crime they committed. We will make them understand that silence is not surrender." He raised his hand toward the fleet visible through the windows. "They thought our disappearance was the end of the story. They were wrong. It was only the beginning." In the council chamber, High Counselor Vareth slept peacefully that night, confident that the human problem was solved forever. He did not know that in the darkness between stars, 8 billion humans were watching, waiting, preparing. The silence had only just begun. 20 years passed like a dream for the Galactic Council. Without humans to compete against, the elder races flourished. Trade increased, conflicts decreased. The 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia congratulated themselves on their wisdom. They had removed a troublesome element from their civilization, and everything had improved. The former human territories were divided exactly as planned. The Therian Dominion claimed the richest worlds, including the green paradise of New Eden and the mineral-heavy moons of the Kepler system. The Vestian Empire took control of the major trade routes. The Ashen Collective expanded into the Outer Rim colonies. High Counselor Verath, now ancient beyond measure, declared the human era officially closed. Monuments were built celebrating the Council's unity. Schools taught children that humans had been a failed experiment, a primitive species that could not handle the pressures of galactic civilization. Everything was perfect. And then the disappearances began. Commander Vareth, the younger, was the grandson of the High Counselor. He had grown up hearing stories about the troublesome humans and how his grandfather had wisely guided the Council through that difficult period. He had never met a human in his life. To him, they were figures from history, no more real than the ancient myths of his own species. He commanded the patrol cruiser Dominance and spent his days investigating minor incidents in the Outer Rim. It was boring work, far from the glory he believed he deserved. But his grandfather had insisted that he prove himself through service. The distress signal came from a mining colony on a small moon in the Reach sector. The message was brief and confused. Something about equipment failures and strange readings. Then silence. Varath assembled a small fleet and traveled to investigate. He expected to find a technical malfunction, maybe a faulty reactor or a communication breakdown. What he found instead would haunt him for the rest of his life. The colony was intact. Every building stood exactly where it should be. The mining equipment was still operational. The life support systems hummed quietly in the background, but there were no people. 30,000 Therian citizens had lived on that moon. Workers, administrators, families with children, all gone. Not a single body, not a single sign of struggle, just empty streets and abandoned homes and a silence so deep it felt like drowning. "Scan for life signs," Varath ordered, his voice tight with confusion. His science officer, a young female named Kira, worked her console with shaking hands. "Nothing, Commander. No life signs anywhere on the surface. But the systems show that everything was functioning normally until approximately 6 hours ago. Then all biological readings simply stopped." "What could do that? A weapon? A disease?" "Unknown, Commander, but there is something else." Kira pointed to her display. "There is a message, carved into the stone of the central plaza. It was not there in any previous surveys." Varath felt something cold move through his blood. "Show me." The image appeared on the main screen. In the center of the plaza, cut deep into the rock with perfect precision, were words in the old Council standard language. "We remember what you did to Proxima." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Varath stared at the message, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were seeing. Proxima was a name from ancient history. A human colony that had been destroyed by an asteroid 300 years ago. Everyone knew the story, but not everyone knew the truth. Varath knew. His grandfather had told him once late at night after too much ceremonial wine. The asteroid story was a lie. Proxima had been destroyed by Therian warships, acting on secret orders from the Council. 2 million humans had died in a single night, murdered because they had grown too prosperous, too independent, too threatening to the established order. It was supposed to be a secret that would never be revealed. But someone remembered. Someone knew. And someone had taken 30,000 Therians without leaving a trace. Over the next 5 years, it happened again and again. 17 Council colonies vanished in exactly the same way. Different species, different locations, different times, but always the same pattern. Empty buildings, silent streets, and a message carved in stone referencing crimes that the Council had buried in classified archives. "We remember the trade ship Mercy, destroyed by Vestian pirates under Council protection. We remember the children of Haven, sold into slavery by Ashen merchants. We remember every name, every death, every lie." Panic spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Emergency sessions were held in fortified chambers. Accusations flew between species. Some believed it was an internal conspiracy. Others suspected a new alien threat from beyond known space. Nobody wanted to say the obvious truth. Admiral Scott Palmer watched from the bridge of his stealth ship as another Council patrol searched desperately for answers. They scanned empty space. They investigated dead ends. They found nothing, because they were not looking in the right places. Scott was 53 years old. He had been born on a hidden station in the void between galaxies, raised by parents who taught him that patience was the greatest weapon. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His executive officer, Laura Bennett, approached with a data tablet. "The Council has mobilized another search fleet, 300 ships heading for the outer reach." "Let them search," Scott replied. "They will find nothing. They are looking for an enemy they can understand, ships they can fight, worlds they can conquer. They cannot imagine what we have become." Laura nodded. "Phase 2 is nearly complete. The last Council crime on our list is the destruction of the passenger liner Hope. 40,000 refugees killed by a Korath battleship and blamed on engine failure. I remember. My grandmother was supposed to be on that ship. She missed the departure by 6 hours. Scott turned to look at the stars. Begin preparations. We will remind the Korath of what they did. Far away, in the Great Council chamber, High Counselor Varath addressed the assembled representatives with a confidence he did not feel. These attacks are the work of terrorists, extremists, perhaps survivors of some species we conquered long ago. We will find them and destroy them. The Council has faced threats before, and we have always prevailed. But as he spoke, his eyes betrayed his fear, because deep in his heart, he knew the truth. The humans had not fled, they had not surrendered. They had not accepted their defeat. They had simply been waiting, and now, after 20 years of silence, they were ready to remind the galaxy exactly what humanity was capable of. The message that arrived at the council chamber that night was simple. It appeared on every screen, every display, every device simultaneously. No one could trace its source. No one could block its transmission. It contained only 3 words. We are coming. The council chamber had become a place of fear. For thousands of years, the Great Hall had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Treaties had been signed there. Wars had been ended. The 12 elder races had gathered in that sacred space to shape the destiny of the galaxy. Now it felt like a tomb. High Counselor Varath sat on his ancient throne and watched the chaos unfold before him. Representatives from every species shouted at each other. Accusations filled the air. Old alliances crumbled under the weight of suspicion and terror. The Vestian Empire demands answers, roared Ambassador Korath, slamming his clawed hand against the podium. 3 of our colonies have vanished, 15 million citizens gone without explanation, and still the Council does nothing. The Council is doing everything possible, Varath replied, his voice thin and tired. Our intelligence services are working constantly. Our military forces are on high alert. We will find whoever is responsible. You know who is responsible, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Counselor Mira of the Ashen Collective. She was old for her species, her feathers gray with age, but her eyes remained sharp. Unlike many of her colleagues, she had always paid attention to history. This is not the work of unknown terrorists, Mira continued. This is not a random attack by some forgotten enemy. The messages left at every vanished colony reference specific events, specific crimes, crimes that only one species would remember. Impossible, Varath snapped. The humans are gone. They left 20 years ago. They had no ships capable of this, no technology, no resources. That is what we believed. That is what we wanted to believe. Mira walked slowly toward the center of the chamber. I have spent the last 2 years studying the pattern of these attacks. The precision, the timing, the choice of targets. This is not revenge, this is a message, and only humans would send such a message. The chamber fell silent. Varath shook his head. Even if the humans survived somewhere, they could not have developed this kind of capability. We monitored them for centuries. We knew every ship they built, every weapon they created. They were primitive compared to us. A young intelligence officer named Keth stepped forward. He had been standing in the shadows, waiting for permission to speak. His hands trembled as he held up a data tablet. High Counselor, I have evidence that suggests Counselor Mira is correct. Varath's eyes narrowed. Speak. We recovered fragments from one of the vanished colonies. Ship debris. Very small pieces, but enough to analyze. The energy signature does not match any known Council design. But the underlying patterns, the basic structure of the technology, is unmistakably human. That proves nothing. The humans could have sold their technology to someone else before they left. No, High Counselor. Keth swallowed hard. The technology we found is not old. It is not based on anything the humans had when they disappeared. It is new, advanced. In some ways, it is beyond anything we possess. The silence that followed was absolute. "What are you saying?" Verath whispered. "I am saying that the humans did not flee, High Counselor. They did not surrender. They went somewhere we could not find them, and they spent 20 years building, planning, preparing." Keth looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of the council representatives. "Based on our projections, what we have seen so far is not an invasion. It is a demonstration. They are showing us what they can do." Far from the council chamber, in the vast darkness between galaxies, General Daniel Hayes addressed the human collective. The station where they gathered was one of hundreds that humanity had constructed during their years of exile. It hung in the empty void, invisible to any sensor, powered by energy sources that the Council could not even imagine. Around it floated the greatest fleet ever assembled by human hands. Daniel was 60 years old. He had gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice carried the strength of a man who had dedicated his entire life to a single purpose. "The Council is beginning to understand," he announced. "They are starting to realize that we never left. We never surrendered. We simply chose to become something new." The crowd before him numbered in the thousands: scientists, soldiers, politicians, ordinary citizens. All of them had been born in exile. All of them had grown up hearing stories of the world their ancestors had lost. For 20 years, we have watched them from the shadows. We have studied their weaknesses. We have recorded their crimes. And now, we have shown them that there are consequences for what they did to us. A young officer named Amy Chen raised her hand. "General, what if they refuse to listen? What if they choose to fight instead of negotiate?" Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then they will discover what humanity is truly capable of. We do not want war. We do not seek destruction. But we will not accept the role they assigned to us. We will not be slaves. We will not be forgotten. We will not be erased from history." He pointed toward the windows, toward the endless fleet that waited in the darkness. "Every ship you see was built by human hands. Every weapon was designed by human minds. Every piece of technology came from our determination to survive, to grow, to become stronger than they ever imagined possible." He paused and let his words settle over the crowd. The council believed that silence meant surrender. They were wrong. Silence was our weapon. Patience was our strategy. And now, patience has become power. In the council chamber, Verath struggled to maintain control. The representatives were demanding action. The military leaders were demanding targets. Everyone wanted someone to blame, something to attack. But how do you attack an enemy you cannot see? How do you fight a species that spent 20 years learning to become invisible? A new message appeared on the main display. Unlike the previous transmissions, this one included an image, a face, human. The man on the screen looked directly at the council with calm, steady eyes. He wore no uniform, no insignia. He could have been anyone. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began. "My name is Daniel Hayes. I speak for the human collective, the union of all human worlds and stations and ships that you believed no longer existed." Verath rose from his throne. "You are responsible for the attacks on our colonies. You have murdered millions of innocent people." "No," Daniel replied. "We have relocated them. Every citizen of every vanished colony is alive and well. They are being held in comfortable facilities far from council space. They are not prisoners. They are witnesses." "Witnesses to what?" "To the truth." Daniel leaned forward. "For 300 years, the council committed crimes against humanity and called them accidents. You destroyed our worlds and blamed natural disasters. You murdered our people and claimed they died from disease or equipment failure. You erased our history and told the galaxy we never existed. His voice hardened. "We have kept records of every crime, every lie, every death. The citizens we have taken will see those records. They will learn what their governments did in their names, and then they will be returned to tell everyone else." Verath's face twisted with rage. "You think you can threaten the Council? We have the largest military force in the galaxy. We will find you and destroy you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You had 300 years to destroy us. Instead, you taught us to be patient. You taught us to be invisible. You taught us that the only way to survive was to become something you could never defeat." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Counselor Mira spoke the words that everyone was thinking. "They are not afraid of us. They have never been afraid of us. And that, more than anything else, should terrify us all." The Council had never assembled a fleet so large. 3,000 warships gathered in the Reach sector, representing every species, every military tradition, every weapon system in the known galaxy. Dreadnoughts, the size of small moons, floated beside fast attack cruisers. Carrier ships launched endless patrols of fighters. Supply vessels stretched back for light years, carrying enough ammunition to fight a war that would last centuries. Admiral Korath of the Vestian Empire stood at the center of the combined command. He had been chosen to lead this mission because his species had the longest military tradition. The Vestians had conquered half the galaxy before joining the Council. They had never lost a war. Korath intended to keep that record perfect. "The humans have hidden somewhere in this region," he announced to his assembled commanders. "Our intelligence suggests they have constructed stations in the void between star systems. We will find them. We will destroy them. And we will end this threat once and for all." His words were met with confident agreement. The commanders of 12 species nodded and returned to their ships. They believed in their overwhelming power. They believed that no enemy could stand against such force. They had no idea what they were facing. The fleet moved into the search zone in perfect formation. Sensors swept the darkness. Probes were launched in every direction. For 3 days, they found nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the lights went out. It happened in an instant. Every ship in the Armada lost power simultaneously. Navigation systems failed. Weapons went offline. Communications fell silent. Only life support continued to function, keeping the crews alive in the sudden darkness. Korath stood on his bridge and watched his displays go blank. Around him, his officers shouted in confusion and fear. Nothing like this had ever happened before. It should have been impossible. "Emergency power," he ordered. "Get our systems back online." "We are trying, Admiral," his chief engineer replied. "But we cannot identify the cause. It is as if something is actively blocking our systems from functioning." A single light appeared on the main screen. A transmission coming through on a frequency that should not have been working. A human face appeared, a woman with gray-streaked hair and calm, steady eyes. She wore a simple uniform with no insignia except a small patch on her shoulder showing an image of Earth. "Admiral Korath," she said. "My name is Kelly Grant. I am an admiral in the Human Collective Fleet. I want you to listen very carefully to what I am about to tell you." Korath tried to respond, but his communication systems were still blocked. He could only watch and listen. "Your fleet is currently surrounded by 247 stealth platforms. Each platform carries enough firepower to destroy this entire armada 10 times over. You cannot see them on your sensors. You cannot fight them. Your weapons do not function. Your engines do not function. You are completely helpless." The Admiral felt something cold move through his blood. He had commanded warships for 60 years. He had faced enemies across the galaxy. He had never felt fear like this. "You are alive right now because we choose mercy," Kelly continued. "We could destroy you in seconds. We could eliminate every ship, every crew member, every life in this fleet. But that is not what we want. We are not here for revenge. We are here to deliver a message." She leaned closer to the camera. "Humanity is returning to the galactic stage. We are not asking for permission. We are not negotiating territory. We are informing the Council that the old order is finished. You will release all records of crimes committed against human populations. You will acknowledge our sovereignty, and you will understand one simple truth." Kelly paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as steel. "You never defeated us. You never contained us. You simply convinced yourselves that we were not a threat. That was the greatest mistake your species ever made. We did not vanish out of fear. We vanished to become something you could never imagine. Something that has been watching, waiting, learning." On every ship in the fleet, crews watched in stunned silence. Warriors who had never known defeat stared at screens showing a single human face. For the first time in their lives, they understood what it felt like to be powerless. "We know every weakness in your defenses," Kelly continued. "We know every secret code, every hidden passage, every vulnerability in your systems. We have spent 20 years studying you, learning how you think, understanding how you fight. There is nothing about your civilization that we do not know." Korath found his voice at last. "What do you want from us?" The question somehow made it through the blocked communications. Kelly seemed unsurprised. "We want you to deliver our message to the Council. Tell them that humanity offers two choices. They can accept us as equals, acknowledge their crimes, and work alongside us to build something better. Or they can refuse and discover just how much we have learned during our time in the shadows." She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "The citizens you thought we murdered are being returned to your space as we speak. Millions of witnesses who have seen the truth of what their governments did to humanity. They will tell everyone. The lies you have built your civilization on will crumble, and then you will face a choice." The transmission flickered. "We would rather be your friends than your enemies. We would rather build than destroy. But we will not accept the role you assigned to us. We will not be silent. We will not be invisible. We will not be erased." The screen went dark. For a long moment, nothing happened. Korath stood frozen on his bridge, surrounded by officers who had no idea what to do. Then, slowly, power began to return. Lights flickered back to life, consoles rebooted, engines hummed as systems came back online. When the sensors finally started working again, there was no sign of the human platforms, no trace that they had ever been there, just empty space and 3,000 council ships floating in the darkness. "Admiral," his tactical officer whispered, "what do we do?" Korath stared at the stars for a long time before answering. "We go home. We tell the Council what happened here, and we pray that they have enough wisdom to accept the humans' offer. And if they refuse?" Korath turned to face his officers. For the first time in his long career, he looked old, tired, afraid. "If they refuse, then we have already lost. We just do not know it yet." The fleet withdrew from the search zone in complete silence. No one spoke of what they had witnessed. No one celebrated their survival. They simply turned their ships toward home and began the long journey back. Behind them, hidden in the darkness, Admiral Kelly Grant watched them go. "Phase 4 complete," she reported. "The message has been delivered." General Daniel Hayes responded through the communication system. How did Korath react? He understood. They all understood. For the first time in 300 years, the Council knows what it feels like to be helpless. Good. Now we give them time to think, time to discuss, time to realize that they have only one real choice. Kelly nodded. And if they choose wrong? Daniel's voice was calm. Then we will teach them what happens when you underestimate humanity. But I do not think it will come to that. Fear is a powerful teacher. And today, we gave them a lesson they will never forget. In the darkness between stars, the human fleet remained invisible. waiting, watching, ready for whatever came next. The council chamber had never been so silent. Representatives from all 12 species sat in their ancient seats, their faces marked by fear and uncertainty. The great hall that had witnessed thousands of years of galactic history felt different now. The air itself seemed heavier, charged with the weight of what was about to happen. For the first time in 20 years, humans were about to walk through those sacred doors. High Counselor Verath sat on his throne and tried to maintain his dignity. He was ancient beyond measure, his scales faded to pale gray, his eyes clouded with age. He had ruled the council for 60 years. He had believed that his legacy would be the elimination of the human threat. Instead, his legacy would be surrender. The great doors opened slowly. Sunlight streamed through the entrance, and for a moment, the human delegation appeared as shadows against the brightness. Then they stepped forward, and the council saw them clearly for the first time. There were only 5 of them. They wore simple gray uniforms with no medals, no decorations, no symbols of rank except for a small patch showing the image of Earth. They walked with quiet confidence, their footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. Leading them was President Ryan Foster. He was a man of average height and average build, with graying hair and kind eyes. He could have been anyone. He could have been nobody. There was nothing about his appearance that suggested he commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And yet, every representative in the chamber felt the weight of his presence. Ryan approached the central podium and looked at the assembled counselors. He did not speak immediately. He simply stood there, meeting their eyes one by one, letting them see that he was not afraid. 300 years ago, he began at last, humanity came to this council seeking partnership. We had just discovered that we were not alone in the universe. We were excited, hopeful. We believed that the stars held wonders beyond our imagination. His voice was calm and measured, without anger or triumph. We offered our knowledge, our labor, our friendship. We asked only for respect and fair treatment. Instead, we received contempt, exploitation, and when we protested, we received violence. He paused and let the weight of history settle over the room. You destroyed Proxima and called it an accident. 2 million of our people, gone in a single night. And you told the galaxy that an asteroid was responsible. You sabotaged our colony ships and blamed navigation errors. You restricted our trade routes and limited our growth. You did everything in your power to ensure that humanity would never rise to challenge your dominance. Verath tried to interrupt. We acted in the interest of galactic stability. Humans were aggressive, unpredictable. We had to protect the other species. You had to protect your power, Ryan replied. You were afraid, not of what we were, but of what we might become. And so you tried to keep us weak, dependent, beneath you. He shook his head slowly. And when we finally withdrew from your society, you celebrated. You divided our territories among yourselves. You erased our history from your records. You taught your children that humans were a failed experiment, a primitive species that could not handle the pressures of civilization. Ryan gestured toward the windows, toward the sky beyond. You thought our silence meant defeat. You could not imagine that a species would choose to disappear, to endure decades of hardship in the darkness between stars, simply to build something greater, something you could never anticipate. He raised his hand, and holographic displays filled the chamber. Images appeared all around them, floating in the air like ghosts of a future the council had never imagined. Human cities on worlds the council had never discovered. Towers of glass and steel rising toward alien skies, children playing in parks beneath purple clouds, families gathering for meals in homes built on moons that the elder races had considered uninhabitable. Fleets of ships using technology that defied conventional physics, drives that could cross the galaxy in days, shields that could withstand any weapon the Council possessed, weapons that could disable entire armadas without causing a single death, populations numbering in the tens of billions, healthy, educated, free. "We did not hide because we were weak," Ryan said. "We hid because we refused to become like you. We refused to conquer through force what could be earned through patience. We refused to destroy what we could one day embrace." He looked directly at Verath. "And now that patience has ended." The High Counselor rose on trembling legs. His voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want from us?" Ryan met his gaze without flinching. "We want nothing you are not willing to give freely. We have no interest in revenge. We have no desire to dominate. We simply want what we asked for 3 centuries ago. Partnership, respect, a place at this table as equals." He turned to address the full assembly. "The choice is yours. You can accept humanity's return and work alongside us to build something better. A true galactic community based on respect rather than fear, cooperation rather than exploitation, justice rather than power." His eyes moved across the chamber, meeting the gaze of every representative. "Or you can reject us again. You can try to fight us. And you will discover just how much we have learned during our time in the shadows. We know every secret you have buried, every crime you have committed, every weakness in your defenses." He smiled, and for the first time, there was warmth in his expression. "But we would rather be your friends than your nightmares. We would rather build than destroy. The decision is yours." The silence that followed stretched for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, Counselor Mira of the Ashen Collective rose from her seat. "I vote to accept humanity's return," she said quietly. "I vote to acknowledge our crimes. I vote to begin again." One by one, the other representatives stood. The Korath, the Vestians, even the Therians. Each one spoke the same words. Each one chose the same path. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full council membership with all rights and privileges. The crimes of the past were formally acknowledged. Committees were formed to discuss reparations. Truth commissions were established to ensure that the history books would finally tell the real story. When the session ended, Ryan Foster walked toward the chamber doors with his delegation. Lieutenant Megan Drake, his aide, fell into step beside him. "Do you think they really understand now, sir?" she asked quietly. Ryan paused at the threshold and looked back at the council chamber one last time. The representatives were already talking among themselves, their voices mixing in a confused babble of fear and hope and uncertainty. "They understand enough," he replied. "They understand that humanity does not surrender. We do not break. We do not forget. And when we choose to fight, we do not fight fair. We fight to win." He turned and walked out into the sunlight. "Let them remember that. It might just keep the peace for another 1,000 years." Behind him in the great council chamber, a new era was beginning. An era where humans would stand as equals among the stars, where their children would grow up knowing that they belonged, where the silence of the past would give way to a future filled with possibility. It had taken 300 years, 300 years of suffering, 300 years of patience, 300 years of building something greater in the darkness between stars. But humanity had finally come home, and this time, they were not asking for permission. Far away in the hidden stations where the human collective had been born, celebrations erupted across every world. People danced in the streets, families embraced. Old veterans who had spent their lives preparing for this moment finally allowed themselves to weep. Admiral Nathan Cole, now elderly and frail, watched the news from his quarters aboard the Horizon. He had commanded the first ships to carry humanity into exile. He had wondered if he would live to see this day. Now, at last, he knew the answer. "We did it," he whispered to no one in particular. We actually did it. On the screen, President Ryan Foster was giving his first speech to the United Galaxy. His words spoke of hope and healing, of bridges being built across centuries of pain. But Nathan knew the truth beneath those gentle words. Humanity had not won because they were stronger. They had not won because they were smarter. They had won because they were willing to do what no other species could imagine. They had won because they understood that true strength was not measured in weapons or ships or territory. True strength was measured in the willingness to wait, to endure, to sacrifice everything for a future that might never come. And when that future finally arrived, humanity was ready. They had always been ready. The stars belonged to everyone now, and humanity would make sure that no one ever forgot it.